I want to chime in about a new tour date we have in Austin. We have added another show there. Sunday, June 11th at 7 p.m. at the Bass Concert Hall, and we will be there. I'll also be in Edmonton, Alberta, July 14th. Guilford, New Hampshire, Guilford, July 20th. Windsor, Ontario, August 18th. Niagara Falls, Niagara. I don't want to say that. I don't want to upset any people. August 20th. And Toronto, August 27th. Get all your tickets at theovon.com/TOUR. We've got some new merch items to tell you about. The Be Good to Yourself crew neck in teal. It's frosty. And we got the new hoodie in bittersweet. Plus, we've got the root beer t-shirts from the root beer cartoon. All that and more at theovonstore.com. Hey, guys, I'm in the West Village of New York City today. And I am at my friend Keat. She is a entrepreneur. She has a beautiful coffee shop and floral shop called Rosecrans, and she let us use this vintage Carriage House today to record in. So very grateful to her. If you want to support her or some of her businesses in the Village in New York City, you can check her out at AdHoc Collective, and we are very grateful for this beautiful space that we get to record in today. Today's guest is a journalist. He's a public speaker. He's a New York Times best-selling author who creates works that often deal with what makes us human, how stories and facts overlap. He has his own podcast, Revisionist History, which goes down some really unique rabbit holes. You'll hear a little bit about that today. I'm grateful to have in one of the most unique minds of our time, and to get to spend some time with him. Today's guest is Malcolm Gladwell. Shine that light on me. I'll sit and tell you my stories. Shine on me, and I will find a song I will sing it. I'm on stage. Malcolm, thanks for being here, man.
Not at all.
Yeah, thank you. We met years ago briefly. It was a coffee shop in Los Angeles. Yeah, it was called Top of Montana, maybe, or some. There was a coffee shop on Montana Avenue over in like
Brentwood.
Yeah, in Brentwood. Yeah, and I remember seeing you there, and I was like, and I wanted to ask you about. I mean, I was just thinking, like, man, it would be crazy if one day I got to talk with Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
So
I used to hang out at Cafe Lux in the Brentwood Country Mart.
Oh yeah, that place is nice.
Oh, it wasn't there though.
No, it wasn't there.
I made a rare. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's changed names. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I used to go there in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun place. Everyone sits outside.
Yep,
yeah,
everyone sits outside, and some people have dogs and stuff, and
That's
sometimes
right.
they even give away dogs there. They'll have like a little, one of those kennels, or like a kennel will come. They're like, you want these dogs, you know?
Yeah. It used to be like a Coffee Works or something. No, then they have some funny name now. Yeah, I like that place a lot.
Yeah, it was cool. But I remember seeing you, man. I was so excited.
Yeah.
So really awesome to be able to get to chat with you today. Yeah, I was thinking, like, one thing about you that's unique is your hair.
Well, the same could be said of you.
Yeah.
We are people, you know, a friend of mine once said, there are only a handful of people in history who are recognizable in profile, like in, you know, a black and white, simple, you know, Mickey Mouse. You know, this is like a very short list. He's like, you have the potential to be recognizable in profile.
Yeah.
So do you.
Do you feel like it does something for you? Like, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think if I am going to go buy a book, right? Especially from like a smart guy, right? Like, I there's something in me that wants that guy to look smart.
Well, you're telling me I look smart?
I think to me, it would be my perception. But I don't know if I thought that, if I know that you look smart because I've read some of your books and I think that you're smart,
Yeah.
or is it because
It's the forehead. It's not the hair.
I don't know. I don't know.
There's actually, I don't know if this is true or not, but maybe I read somewhere, someone was telling me people do falsely, but nonetheless, is a stereotype about people with big foreheads. I have a very high forehead and it slopes back. I have my mom's forehead. People think that means I have a big brain. I don't think it does. I think I just have a high forehead that slopes back. But I think you look at a big forehead and you think, whoa,
There's something in there.
there's something in there.
Yeah, that guy's got a Hemi in there. That guy's got a V6. Yeah. Yeah, I could see. Yeah, I guess maybe I could see that. But I think there is something you want the guy to look. So you kind of want the guy to look smart.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's going on hair-wise is people with big hair like mine got lucky with Einstein. Einstein set the template for the big crazy hair being associated with genius, right? Before Einstein, if you asked someone to imagine a genius, they would never have imagined someone with a head of frizzy hair. There was no association there. Einstein is like the kind of template for this idea that, he has a Jufro, not an afro, but, the idea that a fro is somehow symbolic of craziness comes from there.
Yeah, he does. He's almost got that fact fro. He's like, oh, this fro's got facts in it. Or he gave you that
He does
energy.
have awesome hair. Einstein is the most brilliantly kind of branded genius of all time.
Yeah.
Right. But also, since we're on this subject, Beethoven, also crazy hair.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it goes back a little further, not quite as magnificent as Einstein. But when you picture Beethoven in your mind, you do picture like this shock of hair that sort of symbolizes his intellectual turmoil.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, well, it seems like his hair seems like he's just like there's so much going on. It's got to get out of me somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think your hair symbolizes?
Well, I noticed once I grew my hair. I had my hair long when I was young.
Yeah.
And then I tried a little bit more to like assimilate, kind of. I feel like whenever I moved to Los Angeles, and I had my hair short. I think I was trying to, audition for sitcoms and different things. And then once I grew my hair long again, I just felt like myself.
Yeah.
I felt a lot more human.
Mm-hmm.
One time somebody cut the back of my hair off, like on purpose. They did it without me knowing, a barber, like in like a vindictive way. And I didn't realize it until later. And I felt like dehumanized even. Like I don't know if that's the word, but I almost felt like when Native Americans, when they would take the other person's scalp, it made me think of that. Like I felt like I don't know. I feel like your hair, it really has something to do with you,
Yeah. Well, you're channeling a little Patrick Swayze at the moment.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
Hopefully non-cancerous, because I think he had, but he smoked a lot, I think.
Yeah. I don't know about his, yes. I'm thinking that, or or like a really fun, metal band from the 70s.
Yeah.
That's the other, right? Those are good associations, by the way.
Yeah, no, it feels good. Yeah, no, I feel like it's a warm judgment,
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought about that. I was like, oh, Malcolm has interesting hair. His hair makes me believe that he is smart. Is there, like, does his hair mean anything to him? Did he like pick it up from somewhere? Because my hair does make me feel like a lot more comfortable as myself.
Yeah.
Some people call my hair a mullet haircut. I don't think of it like that. I just think of this is how I feel most comfortable. And this feels, and it feels like your hair, it's an expression of you kind of. It's like, it almost picks up signals. I think some people, or I don't know if this is true or not. I might just be saying this and think that it's true, but like some animals have like little hair on them and it picks up information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's
Well, I've always had, I have my mom's hair. My mom is black, so I have a version of her hair. And I historically, my hair is short at the moment. It has been much longer. When I was a kid, it was much longer. And I think I liked it because it was, I grew up in an area that did not have was very, very kind of white.
Mm-hmm.
There was very little curly hair going on where I grew up.
Yeah.
And I think I sort of liked the idea that I stood out a little bit.
Yeah.
Seemed kind of, I think that was the main attraction of it, it was an element of difference.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I grew up in an area that had like a lot of clean. There were some people that had like real clean hair. Like their hair looked like when they were asleep at night, their hair was also asleep. Whereas I've always felt like like nothing inside of me has ever gotten a moment of rest, really.
Yeah.
I've always felt like even when I'm laying down, like the rest of me is just frenetically trying to just survive in the world. So I think I remember seeing some people and their hair just looked so comfortable. I was like, God dang, boy, that's nice, Like their hair looked like it stayed, like, like it just, it had looked like it had conditioner just built into it,
Well, I don't do anything to my hair. So I don't comb it. I don't.
Do you wash it with like shampoo or you just use water?
I just water.
Yeah.
It is the most kind of, I don't even pay any attention to it. It just sort of is.
Yeah.
And then every now and again I get it cut. And don't. It's kind of exists.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because a lot of your book, I read your book.
Mm-hmm.
I read one of the Talking with Strangers.
Oh, yeah.
Talking with Strangers. That's the one that I read. And I didn't think I was going to be able to really read it. And then I knew I would, but it was just like, I didn't know if I'd have the time. And then it was cool. It was enjoyable. It was interesting. It was easy to read. One thing that I found fascinating in it, like, how would you kind of summarize like what the book is sort of about? Like just kind of briefly, just so people can know. And then I had a couple of kind of things that I thought were interesting.
Well, it's a book that tries to figure out why so many of our interactions with strangers go wrong. And because I was struck when I was writing it by how many of the sort of stories in the news were stories about, Bernie Madoff, the famous Ponzi schemer, is a guy that everyone who invested with him, they thought they knew who he was and they were all wrong.
Yeah.
I tell a story about a spy in that book who everyone thought they were a loyal American and they weren't.
The female, right?
Yeah, Montez.
Yeah, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, she's like one of the most damaging spies in American history, and she's just like, she's sitting there doing her job for 10 years, and no one has the slightest inkling that she might be working. She was working for the Cubans the whole time.
Not even her sister and her brother.
She had a brother-in-law who worked for the FBI. No, her sister worked for the FBI.
Yeah.
And was oblivious to the fact.
Yeah, that blew my mind.
Yeah, but they were, and I tell stories about, Jerry Sandusky, that infamous pedophile at Penn State, and he's in that job for 25 years, and like everyone thinks he's just this lovely guy, and so I was really fascinated by that idea that you can meet somebody and you can completely misunderstand so much of what makes them tick. And why would we be that way? You would think as human beings that evolution would have favored those who were good at figuring out strangers, but it hasn't. The opposite is true, right? Here we are at the finest point of our evolution, and we're terrible at this fundamental task. And so that was the kind of puzzle the book tries to unravel.
Yeah. Yeah, and it based it kind of on the Sandra
Bland, yeah.
Sandra Bland. It was a case where an officer pulled a woman over, and then they ended up getting into an altercation, which almost seems like it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And then they arrest the woman. She ends up in jail. And I'm just kind of like summarizing, obviously. And then she takes her own life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of the more kind of, remember there was that string of cases
Yeah.
right around the kind of rise of the Black Lives Matter movement about African Americans having these kind of lethal encounters with police officers. And hers was one of the most high profile. And what was crazy about that one was that because the officers, he's got a video cam running the entire time, we know exactly what happened between the two of them.
Yeah.
And he meets someone, she rolls through a stop sign. He pulls her over. And he becomes convinced really early on that she's up to no good. She's got drugs, she's something. And she's not any of those things. She's just unhappy. And he reads all of her signals of unhappiness as signals of threat and dangerousness. And so he gets her wrong, right? And so the question is, why does he get her wrong? She's a young woman, she's driven a long way to go for a job interview. Her life has not been going well. She's trying to start over in this little town in Texas. And she's had some mental health issues in the past, but not insurmountable ones. But she's just someone who's going through a lot.
Yeah.
And this cop pulls her over and convinced that she's a criminal who's got a gun and maybe drugs and could potentially harm him. And there's a big difference between unhappy and being potentially violent and dangerous. And so my question is, how does a police officer, who you would think would be good at that, right? At being able to distinguish threat from unhappiness.
Yeah.
How did he get it? And so I use that case as the way into the book.
Right.
Which is this, let's use this to try and figure out why we're bad at this.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved kind of like, I didn't know about that. I wasn't familiar with that case, right? Obviously, I'm familiar with like a lot of interactions that you see where with police and black people, it's a pretty common kind of occurrence that, where there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's funny because when I watched the video, because then it led me, then I went and watched the video online, and it felt to me like, yeah, the policeman took some offense to what she did. Yeah. He took some offense to some behavior of hers. I don't know if he felt like she was like dismissive of him or, immediately untrusting, which has to kind of also suck for a police officer. If you are a most trusting guy, you come up and and then everybody's always just like, you're untrustworthy.
Yeah. Well, he's way too quick to jump to a conclusion about her, and that's
he seemed a little high strung.
Yeah,
and she also seemed high strung.
Yeah,
and so it's interesting because also we had a police officer on a while back, and he was saying the number one cause of death amongst police officers is suicide. Yes,
it's an incredibly stressful profession.
Unbelievable. It's like, so it's the whole thing is it's all interesting that. What a stressful job. It's like, and then you have her who's who's obviously dealing with a lot of stress and stuff in her own life. And so then you have this meeting of it's a lot to put on the fact that somebody just rolled a stop sign. It's like something that's not that severe.
Yeah. A lot of that has to do, I concluded, is about time. The problem is that he's rushing. And he rushes to a conclusion. He rushes to kind of deal with her. He rushes to find out what she's all about. He jumps to a judgment about her. And, when you're rushing, the risk of making an error just goes up dramatically. And that's one of the lessons I take away from the book, which is that getting people right requires an enormous amount of patience. We have to, particularly a high stress, high stakes job like policing, we have to build patience into these kinds of situations. Teach police officers that you don't have to resolve this in 2 minutes.
Right.
You pull her over, you take some time to get to know who she is before, you're not on the clock. And by the way, many police officers are on the clock. That's part of the problem, that they have supervisors who are measuring their productivity and saying, you've got to resolve every encounter within. That's an incredible mistake. Doctors are the same way. You go to the doctor, doctors are on the clock. It's one of the reasons why they get things wrong. They don't listen to you. Is that they've got 10 patients at the door and an expectation they have to get through all 10 in the next, that's that idea. We get so obsessed with productivity in many things that we sacrifice the kind of the accuracy and the meaningfulness of the encounter.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Exciting news. We have a new sponsor for our show, and that's Caldera Lab. You can say goodbye to the generic face wash on your counter because Caldera Lab is here to save the day when it comes to your skin. Backed by leading clinical trials where 9 out of 10 men experienced healthier and visibly improved skin, Caldera Lab has the tools to unlock your best first impression. You got to take care of your skin. And I've been using Caldera Lab, and I like it. It makes me, it's masculine, but it makes me feel like I'm taking care of my armor that God gave me. That's why so many men trust Caldera Lab for their skincare needs. Use code Theo at CALDERALAB.com for 20% off their best products. The Clean Slate is where you start your day. It's a balancing cleanser. It uses gentle plant-based cleansing, like rubbing just a sweet garden on your face, leaving all skin types exceptionally refreshed. They also have the base layer and the good. It's that go-to at night before bed. Prep yourself for sweet dreams to show up looking perfect. Get 20% off with our code Theo at calderalab.com. That's 20% off at calderalab.com by using code Theo. Unlock your youthful glow and be ready for summer with CALDERALAB.com. Use code Theo. Cold turkey. Cold turkey. People say it a lot. But there's a better way to break your habits than cold turkey. We're not talking about some strange voodoo or a hex or something, or some TikTok. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume. And they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. I like them, baby. I like them Fume, boy. I like them. Oh, you will too. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfum.com and use code Theo to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code Theo to save an additional 10% off your order today. Yeah, I would totally agree. I think it's almost a micro look at of kind of larger things that are going on in our entire society,
Yeah.
That there's not enough long-term, even a moment doesn't have the longevity that it feels like it used to have.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about how I don't even think every moment is captured now, so it's like a moment used to have this whimsical value that it was like, you can't ever replicate it. It's like, it's like a flash of lightning, it's like, and that's why there was so much value like in storytelling and things. Cause somebody was like, man, you're never going to believe this. Like, this is what happened. And then now we capture every moment, and we watch them so many times that it's, the value of something used to never be able to be replicated. And now everything is so replicatable.
Yeah.
Or replicatable.
This reminds me of, I did a podcast an episode of my podcast, Revisionist History, a couple of years back on, I stumbled on it totally by accident. I met this guy who's a investigator, works with police departments to investigate police shootings. And I was at his house for some office for some other reason, and he showed me this tape. And it's a tape of cops. A guy steals a car. Cops follow him at high speed. They finally get him, pull him over. He gets out of his car, and they shoot him all these times, right? And you hear about it, and you watch the tape the first time, and you think, oh my God, it's another one of these cases where they gunned down this innocent guy who didn't, blah, blah, blah. And then he walked me through, we had the video of the whole thing. He sits me down and he walks me through the video, frame by frame by frame by frame. And he proves that actually it's not what you think. This was a guy who had all kinds of mental health problems, and he wanted the police to kill him. It's a well-known phenomenon of death by cop, where somebody does something and is willing his own. And he's like, you don't catch it the first time you watch this video. You've got to slow it down, break it down frame by frame, have some context about the case, and then you realize it's 100% the opposite of what I thought. The guy is, as they shoot him, he's trying to get them to shoot him more when they don't. Like, and you watch it, he breaks, and he shows you like what's going on. And it was this incredibly, people don't want to hear that interpretation sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I just remember I was sitting, I drove all the way to hit an office outside of San Antonio, Texas, middle of nowhere. It's a really interesting guy. Not a guy I would normally ever meet or hang out with. You know, his world is very different from mine. And he just sat me down. I just remember him saying, I got to show you this video. It was one of my favorite episodes I've done of my podcast. I just thought it was like, and the way I told the story was, we started out and, I wanted the audience to jump to the conclusion that, this is an innocent guy being shot by the cops. And then slowly you kind of peel off the layers of the onion. Yeah. And then you realize, oh my God, I got it wrong. Yeah. Right. It was like a kind of, I'll always remember that. It was one of those cases where, I don't know if you ever had this, where you're trying to tell a story and you think it's going to be really complicated. You sit down with one person for 40 minutes and you think, oh my God, that's it. That's it. That's the whole story. Like, I don't need to do anything else. I just need to run this thing as it happened to me. But it was a very memorable day.
Well, a lot of that talking with strangers was kind of like what you just kind of described. You know, there was a lot of things where I was like, wow, I'm amazed that wasn't seen by people. I'm amazed how how people would get a certain moment wrong, how some people, like you talked about, like defaulting to truth. A lot of times people want to believe the person. So that's like a natural way that a lot of things like that are bad or kind of wrong or off continue to go, because there's just a human nature for us to default to believe or want to believe. I found a lot of that stuff really, really fascinating about the story. And then I liked how in the end it just comes back to this case of this officer and this woman, right? And also, when I was watching the officer and the woman in that tape, there was something about when the woman started smoking, Mm-hmm. I wonder if that because I think with police, there's probably an expectation that things go a certain way, So I wonder if that offended the officer or something. You just don't know sometimes, because even though we can have an idea of everything, it still comes down also to that there's two people who have had their own unique lives up until that moment,
I think he thought that her smoking was that there was something dismissive and also slightly sinister about it. That because he had in his head that she might be a potential bad guy, right? Drugs, guns, something.
Do you think that I didn't read all the case. I didn't see.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think, he's got a variety of kind of scenarios in his head when he stops her. And one of them is she's running drugs and she's armed.
Oh, wow.
And I think so. I think any police officer when you stop someone, you always have in your head a scenario where they're a bad person.
I see.
Right.
So not because she was black, just because of any person.
Just like
Right.
you've got to think, I'm stopping them. I'm, as a police officer, when you approach a car,
Yeah.
you are running the risk that they're armed and they might shoot you, right?
That's a good point. I see what you're saying.
He's got that in his he's got 10 different scenarios in his head, and one of them is
great,
that.
probably.
Yeah. And the fact that she's smoking, I think he kind of, that adds credence to one of the scenarios that says that she's a kind of a weirdo or like something's not right or something. Why would she start
a film
smoking?
noir fan or something?
Yeah, the minute I walk, the minute I get there, she starts smoking. Like, it's just, I don't know. He just sort of, he's categorizing her as that there's something off with her, something wrong with her. And that adds to that expectation, I think.
Yeah, I think I kind of took it as like, this seems like kind of like a white cop kind of guy. So I start to generalize in my head. They kind of have and all police officers, I think, have a certain way that they kind of expect things to go. Like they get an understanding of this is how things go when you stop someone. You tell them what's going on. They comply really to a certain way. And then everybody goes on about their business based kind of upon what the cop decides how things should go.
Yeah.
Right. So I think to me, it seemed like some of the ladies' actions, and the smoking kind of conflicted with that. But it was real, just going back into your book and along this kind of same thread, one of the things that really stood out to me was about how judges and machines, like if you put the information, like if you put people before a judge in a court, that the judge who you think would be able to interpret a lot more information by seeing the person, listening to the case, they got it wrong more than the machine did. Is that the right way to say it?
So if I simply give you so the question is, you've been arrested and the judge has to decide whether to let you out on parole.
Yeah, I have.
And that's no, I mean I'm talking hypothetically.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
But
yes.
So the judge has to make a prediction about you. And the question is, how good is the prediction, right? And a lot rides on that prediction. If you go out and commit another crime, the judge looks bad.
It's why they cut people's hair and shave them and put them in a suit. And
exactly.
It's that perception.
So the question is, I could just summarize on paper all of the things about you, where you live, how old you are, nature of your crime, whether you've been arrested before, blah, blah. Feed them into a computer or an AI system, right? And have the computer make a prediction. Or I can give the same information to the judge and say, meet the person. So you're giving the judge more information. You're allowing the judge to look at all the information the computer looks at, plus whatever information they can glean from the face-to-face encounter. And the question is the judge better at making that prediction because they have access to more information, to the information they can gather from a face-to-face encounter? And the answer is no, they're worse.
Wow.
In other words, meeting somebody makes you worse at predicting what they're going to be doing then. So it brings into question all kinds of things, like do job interviews, this is another thing, by the way, I've been obsessed with my podcast, Revisionist History. We did a show on job interviews. And the truth is that there's not a lot of evidence that in a job interview, meeting the person helps, right? And I did a funny thing where I've been hiring assistants for 20 years. So I went back to all my old assistants and I had them tell the story of how I hired them. And because I don't believe in job interviews, I hire them in the most kind of random way. I'm like, I don't even bother asking questions. I don't ask them. I make a rule of never asking them where they went to school. So it was funny. It was a funny episode because I was interviewing all these old, and I had forgotten how totally random my hiring practices are. And by the way, I've never had a mistake. Only once did I hire someone who didn't work out, and they left within 2 weeks. I'm still in touch with one of my old assistants is one of the most trusted employees at my podcast company.
Oh, that's awesome.
But my point is, it's just not. You can pretend that sitting down and talking to somebody for half an hour will help you make a meaningful judgment about what kind of person they are, but you can't. It's nonsense. So you might as well. My point is, I just roll the dice. What the hell?
Yeah.
How most people most people, if they're all I'm interested in is if they applied for the job, they're clearly interested in working for me. They showed up on time, so I don't know. They seem reasonably, they're like, I try to be nice to my assistant, and if you're nice to people, they usually work hard. So like, I pick people who have got a college education, so I know know something about the world. That's all I need. Why don't I need anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I've found my producers for podcasts, and I found them like one of the first guys, just a random dude, just emailed me. He's like, "Hey man, I can do the job," and I was like, "This guy sounds wonderful," and he was a great producer for a long time and still is. But it's so crazy sometimes how you find different people. It's like, it's almost like if somebody just breaks through the cracks at a certain moment too, it's almost like this fits right now. This is what's easiest.
What's interesting, and this is the thing I explored in that episode, was it makes you realize that the success of someone in a job is less about that person than it is about the environment you create for that person once they take the job. In other words, a lot of it is about us, the hiring person, not the person we're hiring. That lots and lots of people can thrive if they're brought into an environment that helps them thrive. Right? That's it's like I don't know if you're a big sports fan, but there are certain coaches who can make tons of players go to that coach, and the coach reliably turns them into excellent basketball players or football players.
Right.
And other coaches, it only works with very, very specific people. It makes you realize, it's about the coach, not about the player. Right. How they always talk about general managers in sports, and they say that guy's really great at drafting great athletes out of college. And I always think maybe they're not good at drafting. Maybe they're just good at making sure those players succeed once they arrive. Right? That's the magical piece of it.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. Do you think like on a larger level that we do that's something that we've lost? Like, I talk a lot about purpose and stuff in our podcast about like if you don't have purpose, then you're really left up to the elements of how, of just the whims of whatever the algorithms of social media and stuff send at you, and a lot of purpose has been lost over the years by like, I kind of romanticize that people had more purpose through their jobs back in the day. Like there was a factory in their town and they made tables there. And there was a pride in the town. This is, we have a table at our house that our father made at the factory in our town. There was a sense of pride, and that companies were like, yeah, you're going to move up in the company. And then there was just more of like, it felt like you were the company itself was also nurturing and wanted you to succeed. Whereas now it feels like we've gotten to more of a corporate type of vibe where everything's more about like, protecting like civil laws that make sure everything is like kind of okay, and just making sure no one's going to sue each other, but it's not even about anybody, building up like a equity in the human being anymore.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. A friend of mine once, I remember having a conversation with him. He was a consultant, management consultant. He was talking about that we're happiest when we have three kinds of validation. When we like what we're doing, when the people around us give us positive feelings about what we're doing, and when the broader world gives us feedback. And it's like, if you look at people who are unhappy, it's because in what they're doing, they're lacking one or more of those three things. So we were talking about police officers right now. There are plenty of police officers who like their job and like the people they work with, but now they're operating in an environment where the outside world is very skeptical and hostile and suspicious of police officers. Yeah. That makes it really hard to be happy in your job as a police officer, right? You got two of the three things, and you need all three.
Nightmare.
It's a nightmare, yeah. But you can go down I was talking with, we ran it on my podcast. I did this wonderful discussion with these two fantastic women who were coaches. They coached youth sports, girls sports. And they were talking about how like a lot of people are now quitting coaching. Coaching's become really hard. And I said, well, why has it become hard? Do you still like Does coaching make you feel good? Absolutely. Love it. Greatest thing I ever did. Do the kids you coach like being coached by you? Totally. I'm friends with them for years later. Some of the most important experiences of my life are like, so why are people quitting coaching? They're like, oh, it's the parents. Parents are driving us crazy, torturing us, screaming at us, calling us at all hours. Blah, blah, blah. So it's like they have the personal thing, they love it. They have the immediate feedback and love from the kids they're coaching. But it's the outside world of the parents on the sidelines who are just making them miserable.
Yeah.
Right? You got 2 of 3, and 2 of 3 is not enough. So when I hear what you're talking about, I'm here. That's what you're saying, a version of, you can have a job that you like, but you're talking about the second and third level is not there.
Yeah.
The company isn't giving you, isn't recognizing what you're doing. And the broader world, you're anonymous to the broader world. There isn't, the whole point about being a craftsman in the 19th century sense of that word was that the world recognizes that you had a certain level of expertise. You made the table, and every time someone saw this beautiful table,
I like, Ricky, go get your table and bring it out here. And everybody you did.
Yeah, they understood. They were giving you an outsider was giving you recognition for something that was done with pride and with skill.
Yeah.
And that you can't it's not enough for just you to appreciate that what you're doing is of value.
That's interesting. And I think, a lot of people probably don't know that. And so I think a lot of people probably wonder, why am I not feeling some fulfillment? Why am I not feeling this or that, And I think, I think that's one of the things that leads people to a lot of unhappiness. We were talking about it with school shootings, what leads some of these people to get so caught up. And I think for one, if you don't have any purpose through a job, through a family, or have love in your life, something that gives you purpose every day, then you're really at the whims of social media or anything that which are tailored towards, if you start looking at something bad, it just gives you more bad, it's almost like a Pandora's box in a way.
Yeah.
But we just had been talking a lot about purpose.
Yeah. I think with the school shooting thing is interesting because what's going on there is that there is now a kind of, it's funny, I'm doing in this season of my podcast, I'm doing a whole thing about gun violence. So I've been thinking a lot about this. And we have an episode where we talk a lot about mass shootings. And I think the psychology of that is really going back to the idea of those 3 layers of that there's a world now, a kind of closed culture online of people who are unhealthily obsessed, pathologically obsessed with this kind of violence. And there is no, they've been cut off from the 3rd layer. They're not checking their ideas against what the broader world looks like. They're totally enclosed in this sealed online culture where the only feedback they're getting are from people who think exactly like they do and who feed their kind of obsessive fascination and addiction for this kind of weird violence. If you look at people who have been involved in mass shootings, they're immersed in that world. They know they can talk obsessively for hours about the kids who did the Columbine shooting. Oh
yeah, there's bootleg manifestos. There's people getting have you heard this manifesto? Have you read this copy of it?
It's its own little world, hermetically seen world. And there's no connection to the kind of broader society. And so they're getting all of their validation from that first layer, right? That's what's sort of, and so, trying to solve this puzzle of mass shootings requires at some point to getting access to those kids and kind of breaking them out of that closed universe.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about with online and living in online societies now, it's you can find whatever universe you start to create, right? Whether it's good or bad, that there's this other energy from the other side. It's almost like the mirror, where you used to look in a mirror and you would get an earnest reflection of yourself. It would be based on, sometimes you might not see yourself clearly because of how you thought about yourself or how you felt about yourself. But at least the mirror was going to give you, it was an honest reflection. There was no ability to change the mirror unless you were in a fun house or something. The mirror was the mirror. But now the mirror has the ability to kind of adjust the way you look at yourself, or to give you reflections that make you think the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
Like with algorithms and that sort of thing with social media, you know, because now we're not even, the mirror is just our phone. We're looking in there for so much validation.
Yeah.
It's really weird when the mirror now has it's like, that's freaking really scary, because if you get somebody in a dark hole who doesn't have a strong connection to or purpose in the world, where they feel one of the senses of value from themselves, from other people. What are the other two?
From the internal, your immediate world of people who share your community, and then the broader world.
And then, if you're not feeling some of that, and you're just in your internal, just in this kind of a closed space, or even in a space that the mirror starts to design, that's really, if you get into the dark arts a little bit and it's only showing you dark art, and everybody in there's a dark artist, and you're like, damn, this is the world.
Yeah.
That's real scary, man.
One of the things, this may seem like a stretch, but I thought about this a lot. You know, I'm old enough to remember when television was kind of a mass cultural form. So, you know, when I was in my 20s, every single person I knew watched Melrose Place. Everyone I knew.
Oh yeah.
I could go, and if I saw someone who was 25 years old anywhere in North America, I could start a conversation about Melrose Place, and they would be able to, even if they didn't watch it, it was in the air, right?
Right.
Same thing. I remember.
Yeah, we watched 90210 just to give you similar.
90210.
So it was like kind of a little bit of the younger but sister or brother show.
Exactly. That had the same function.
Right.
But there's tons of television shows in that era. I remember walking down a street in Manhattan when the series finale of Seinfeld aired.
Wow.
And the city was as quiet. There was like, the restaurants were empty. Everybody was home watching Seinfeld. That is impossible today.
Yeah.
Would never happen. But so right then, back then, everyone had the shared experience of a certain set of stories. Seinfeld. And I don't think we did this episode 2 seasons ago or last season on Will and Grace. I think Will and Grace was the last show that had that kind of
shared experience.
And that's why the show was so powerful in changing attitudes about gay marriage and all kinds of things. And the idea that the only thing that's left now kind of is the Super Bowl, but even that, not really. The Oscars don't have the same shared experience power they used to.
Reviled. I don't know if reviled means anything.
Yeah, no. So there's nothing, can you have a society that works if there are no broad shared experiences? I don't know. That's the sort of thing that worries me a lot. It's weird to think of it in terms of, like 90210 as something that brought us all together.
But it makes perfect sense. I can relate to that when you say that.
Yeah.
Because it used to be, I mean, you know, like there was a couple years ago on Joe Rogan, everybody got it really into when that had, I think it was Sebastian Younger book or something. It was about tribe.
Oh, yeah. What was that book called? I can't remember. I know what you're talking about.
I think it was called, Zach, you know what it was? Okay.
Into the Wild? Wasn't Into the Wild.
No, this was the one where it was about how in tribes, when we're in smaller groups, it all made sense. The amount of connectivity we're supposed to have, the checks and balances human-wise, and even when you're saying the shared experience, like if a lion came into the village, or if somebody came in selling some new wares, everybody in the village knew about it. That person would leave. You could all talk about it. It was a share. Like there was some shared. Everybody had the same shared experiences. So you all had this template on which you were kind of connecting about. You know, things to talk about. Yeah. But I never thought about that. Yeah, there's not that many anymore. So you kind of all wander around in your own little worlds, and it starts to feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of scary.
And also it means, it's also, we were talking in very lofty terms, on some level it's less fun. It was kind of fun when it's so much more fun to watch a television show. And it's funny, people under the age of 30 or maybe 25, they've never felt, it breaks my heart, they've never felt this feeling. There was that feeling you had, you're watching the show and you understand it. Not only is everyone you know watching that same show, they're watching that same show at the same time. It's amazing. It's like, it felt like, it's the same feeling you have when you watch sports.
Yeah.
That's part of the power. You know that everyone's watching it at the same time. But this was the idea that a story, a drama on thing was you were watching it like you were watching sports.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And you would call, when it was over, you'd call your friends and you say, can you believe just what happened to like, yeah, that's right.
Dude, I remember there'd be domestic disputes, right, on our street, right? And they would break them up 5 minutes before like In Living Color came on or like some great TV show. Like, look, guys, we know you guys need to, we know there's like two spouses beating the shit out of each other out
Living
here.
Color is a perfect example of a show like this where
Yeah.
we're like, I
You
remember
had to
when
go watch the segments, remember?
you had to what you had to, and like everyone I know discovered that show at the same time, and it was just like, oh my God, this is like, who is this guy, Dave Chappelle? Like suddenly Dave Chappelle, you're talking about Dave Chappelle when you like go to the office, like.
Oh, you mean the Chappelle show? You mean?
No, because he was on it.
He was on
no,
it,
he wasn't on it. No, I'm mixing up it was the Wayans brothers. It was
Yeah, yeah.
The Wayans brothers.
Yeah.
Right.
The one.
Jim Carrey was on it.
Jim Carrey was on that show.
Yeah, the Wayans brothers, and then a bunch of other people were.
Who was on that show, Zach? You got it?
Yeah, Jim Carrey, Damon Wayans, Keenan Ivory Wayans.
All the Wayans, bro. They get.
David Allen Greer.
David Allen Greer, yeah.
Yep, David Allen Greer was so good.
That's right.
Jamie Foxx
was on that show.
there.
That's right.
Lopez.
Jennifer Lopez was a dancer on
She was a
there.
dancer on it. That's
Yeah.
right. She was one of the Fly Girls.
But dude, I remember there would literally be, the cops would be there. There would be a husband and wife fist fighting in the street outside of our apartment. And they'd be like, look, guys,
It's time to.
we got to wrap this up. You know what I'm saying? 90210 is going to be on in 5 minutes. So either get your last punches in. Let's agree we're not going to press charges. The cops will take the liquor, and everybody needs to go sit in front of their TVs. Dude, I remember getting to the if you got the television before, if you had siblings, you would get there and you would get the front position in front of the TV, and you fucking were the king, right? And I remember rubbing my legs like this as hard as I could, like almost trying to create as much energy on my side of the television for whatever program was going to be presented right there, and my siblings would try to jockey for position, and I was just like, I'm going to get as much of the information. I am right here to be transmitted to, like this angle a little bit off center of the TV, you might miss
Because
something.
remember, back then, because the TV's tiny.
Oh yeah, I mean that thing was 11 or 12 inches, dude. I remember we would draw extra TV on the outside of it, like it didn't even make any sense, dude, because it didn't get any transmission, but there was something about that shared experience. We would all go outside then. You're right. We would impersonate the characters from an In Living Color.
Yeah.
We would act out the different things. There was a lot more shared experience. Morgan & Morgan, they are America's largest injury law firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 800 lawyers. With over $15 billion recovered for clients, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. Submitting an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan is so easy, it's more like using an app than hiring a lawyer. With Morgan & Morgan, you can submit a claim without ever having to leave the couch. That's nice. If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/thispastweekend or dial pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. That's FOR, thepeople.com/thispastweekend or pound law, pound 529 from your cell. This is a paid advertisement. I'm a big fan of Raising Cane's. That's right. I am. And their chicken fingers, they do it to me. They do it to me every time. They do it to me. They do it to me. I like them. They got the crinkle cut fries. You can have them. They let you have them when you go in there. And I love them. You know that. And they got the Texas toast, and you can have it in any state. Nobody comes after you. So you got to love that. My go-to order is the Caniac combo. So now that your mouth is watering, I got to let you know that it's easy to order on the Raising Cane's mobile app. That's right, or online at raisingcanes.com. Satisfy your Canes fix by ordering through their app or online at raisingcanes.com or stop by your local retailer. I want to let you know that Gray Block Pizza, they were the first sponsor of this podcast. And the owner moved on. He folded up his dough and he moved to Oregon, and he started a business called Blue Cube Baths. And they are ice plunges, they are cold plunges, and man, they just put you right back into the cradle of civilization, baby. They make you feel alive, son. They'll make a dang eagle land on your tongue, just the virility you feel being in there. They're really, really wonderful. BlueCubeBaths.com. You can check them out. I was very fortunate to receive one as a gift from them, and I just can't recommend them enough. And I just wanted to let you know how they associate to the podcast. And if you're interested in an ice bath or in a cold plunge, Blue Cube Baths is where to go.
Yeah.
And that's why it's one of the things that I love about kind of like the way that you like think and write and stuff. It's like you kind of like have an idea, and this is my summation. This isn't a judgment, but you have an idea and then you kind of just meander away. It's just how things connect, and it's nice, man. It's a nice look at life. That's what I really thought about reading, thinking, talking with strangers.
Yeah.
Was like, oh, wow, this is a lot of neat things that I hadn't really thought about before. It goes into some cases that are really like encapsulating, like, yeah, the Jerry Sandusky thing. I didn't know that this had happened in there, and that the guy didn't really know exactly what he'd heard. And if he thought he'd heard a child and a man having sex in a shower, why he didn't go in there and shut it down.
So
and like
the whole thing is weird.
All the ways you behave, but don't. And when you look back at your behavior, like that didn't make any sense really. Now that I'm breaking it down piece by piece.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it all kind of seemed to flow. Even going back to whenever you talked about like the guy in San Antonio, when you went back and looked at that footage, and at first it all seems one way, but then when you look at it piece by piece, you're like, oh, I had this is something totally different. Mm-hmm. As we start to get even further from moments that we all have together, right? Like and technology technology is kind of going so fast. I mean, you and I both had experiences where we've had kind of life without technology and life with technology. What has been like a surprise to you about some of the things maybe that you didn't see coming with technology? Mm-hmm. Or I know it's kind of a broad question, but maybe we can just kind of start there.
Yeah.
Did you romanticize it in the early on? Did you like?
I didn't understand how much it would encroach on my life. Like, if you had asked me 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, will I be checking my phone every 2 minutes? I would have said, you're nuts. I'm not going to be ruled by my phone. Totally ruled by my phone.
Yeah, same.
So I didn't understand how it would sort of ingratiate itself into, something like Twitter, the idea that I would be, I don't spend a huge amount of time on Twitter, but I do. I scroll through and you're reading 2 sentences. The idea that I would want to consume so much information in 2-sentence form seems crazy to me in retrospect. Like, why? Yeah. I was someone who grew up reading books, consuming things in 10,000 sentence form.
Now you're reading it could be a haiku from some crackhead somewhere. You don't even know. And you're taking it for serious. Yeah, it's like there's a great meme attached to it, and now I form a huge opinion off of it.
And then, so there are all kinds of and the weird way, the other thing that's weird about social media, it took me a long time. I think I no longer, in the beginning, it took me a long time to figure out how easy it is to take it personally. So somebody makes a random comment and you feel it, in the beginning you're injured, and then you think, why am I injured? There's a couple billion people in the world. Some random person who I've never met, who I will never meet, who I don't even know who they are, has decided to say something nasty. I'm going to give you a really dumb example of this. I all of my cousins who are all car crazy, they used to on Canadian Thanksgiving would come to my house upstate, and
Y'all have Thanksgiving?
Canada's, oh yeah, we have it in October.
How'd you guys get it though?
Same way Americans got
Oh.
it. But just because winter starts earlier in Canada, so Thanksgiving's got to be in October.
But was it with like the Native Americans and everything, or
Yeah, it was. Actually, I don't know whether it's explicit. It was just a time. There's an English tradition where you give thanks for the harvest. I think the Canadian one comes from that.
Yeah, so it makes sense you guys a little earlier then because the winter comes earlier.
Winter coming. But anyway, they would all descend on our house, and we're all car crazy. So everyone would bring their sports cars, and we would put them out on the front lawn, take photos, and then drive them all, and then switch off. Right? It was like an annual tradition we did. And one time I posted a picture on Twitter, and I was like, we're all gathered to drive our muscle cars. And they're not muscle cars. I know what a muscle car is. They're not really muscle cars. I just have said it, And then there were all these nasty comments about, they're not muscle cars. I remember my brother read it, and he was so hurt. He was like, why are they being so mean to us? We're just driving our cars for fun. It's like, there's a period where where you don't understand it. It's an impersonal medium masquerading as a personal medium.
Right.
That's the thing. And it takes a little while for you to wrap your head around the fact that, like, no, this doesn't matter. It's it matters as little as that, in the old world, that person said that same thing, but you didn't hear it. Now you hear it, but it's just as trivial. It didn't matter. It's like, right.
Right, but we can't correlate. You're right. We can't correlate that.
Yeah.
It's real interesting because some people probably never recognize that it doesn't matter, right? To some people, that's their life. That's all that matters.
Yeah, they get so. I think that some part of me that's worn off for me, and now I care less.
Yeah, totally, same. But I think it's interesting because that used to be chatter in the background, like people saying, "Oh, that's retarded, that's ridiculous, that's crazy," right? Or "That's awesome, that's great, what a great idea." But those were things you heard those were things in the periphery you never heard.
You never heard them.
It was just the chatter in the distance. But now those are things. If you want to access the chatter in the distance, instead of just having like somebody that means something to you communicate, or getting an interpretation of something from someone that has value, or getting even even negative feedback, but from someone that you respect, you can get those things still, but and those have value. But otherwise, you can also tap into all that other shit.
Yeah,
that doesn't, but it still hurts the same.
Yeah,
that's what's interesting is how much it
does. Yeah, it's a reminder. I think one of the things that I don't think it's new with social media, but it has always been the case that there are a small number of people who, I don't even know whether it's always deliberate, but who express their personal unhappiness or their confusion or their befuddlement in hostile language. And like I said, a lot of times I don't think they mean to be hostile. It's just how it comes out. A lot of times, people who don't communicate for a living aren't necessarily expert at adequately explaining why they don't like something or their reactions to something. They've always been there. We just never heard their voices. That's sort of what we're getting at. Like, most people, I once conducted an experiment where I responded nicely to people who said nasty things about me on Twitter. And I wanted to see what happened. And what happens if they respond again is they almost invariably back down. And you realize that they didn't mean harm to you, or they weren't actually angry at you or hostile. They just didn't know how to express. They had a comment they wanted to make that was with an issue they had with what you were saying. They just didn't know how to say it in a way that was kind of socially kind of positive. And if you're nice about it and kind of, I used to call this love bombing. and I'm still a big believer in love bombing. So I would love bomb them, and I would just sort of be nice in a response. And they would always like calm down, and they would say, yeah, you're right. You're kind of right. I just wondered about this. And you're like, all of a sudden you're having a conversation with them, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's very easy to disarm 90% of critics
Yeah.
just by kind of giving them the opportunity to be nicer about what they're saying.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I wonder if there's like a thing where your brain just cycles through. Yeah, it's just so easy. Why is it so easy for people, humans, and animals? Even we don't even know. Animals don't know how to use social media yet. But why is it so easy for humans?
I love yet. It's coming.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
That's gonna be crazy, dude. When we find out the truth about what some of the animals think, because we've had kind of like a lot of set views on animals for a long time.
Octopus Twitter. Yeah. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, can I get a piano down here? What the fuck do you think I'm doing with all these arms? Why is it so easy for us to say something so mean in a place like social media, you know, or to want to, or it's really crazy because you wouldn't really do that in person.
Yeah. No, you wouldn't do that in person. And yeah, that is, I mean, you wouldn't do that in person because you're scared of the risk. Not scared, but you're mindful of the response. You know, the analogy I was thinking about was, I read somewhere, someone was talking about how do kids learn how do they learn about social interactions? And if you see this especially with boys. I have a almost 2-year-old, though it's a girl, not a boy, but I actually see it a little bit with her. So when they touch you, they don't know anything about how to calibrate their touch. So the difference between a tap and a punch isn't there yet. So, you know, my 2-year-old will reach out to me and she'll, you know, you go, ow, right? And because she's trying to do a playful touch my hair playfully, but she pulls my hair. She wants to touch my nose, but she ends up whacking me in the nose. And what she's getting when I say ow is feedback. And do that enough times and she learns how to calibrate her touch. She learns that if she is legit angry with me, she'll go boom. But if she wants to be playful, she'll go tap. And you see it with kids interacting with animals, right? They start to learn, oh, there's a difference between pulling a tail and stroking a tail, right? But you only learn that if you have repeated interactions in person where you get to practice and learn what's acceptable and what's not. Mm-hmm. When a kid doesn't have access to that kind of practice, then they don't know how to calibrate, right? And there's a whole theory about bullies, that bullies are simply kids who never learn that same process. So they keep hitting too hard, and the other kids start to ostracize them, and that means they're robbed of that additional learning. It's like a vicious circle, and they don't have any chance to practice again. So they're in
prison.
So they're in prison. They're like, and they're 7, and they're still hitting too hard, and the other kids are like, you know what? I'm not dealing with you at all. Like, you don't know how to behave, right?
Yeah.
And I think social media is a version of the bullying. You're not getting the feedback when you're hitting too hard, right? You're not, right? There's no, you say the nasty comment and that's it. You're done. Yeah. No one says ow.
Right.
Which is one of the reasons why I like to respond to my critics.
Then you do get a feedback. So it's like, feedback. Oh, I didn't really mean that, or this is what I meant.
And they get the
hey man, we had a great time. I'd had a tough day. People say stuff like that. I've done that too. Sometimes you want to reply to somebody who says something that's kind of like, they didn't think something was fair, because you want to see what's going on. I genuinely sometimes want to make them okay.
Yeah.
And so you'll reply back, and you're right. A lot of times it just extremely de-escalates.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you start to feel like, you know, there's a lot of people that talk about AI now. It's like a big thing, right? Everybody's kind of nervous about it. We've had a lot of big things that haven't panned out, you know, like NFTs and
what happened with NFTs?
It was just pictures of stuff. It's exactly what you and I thought it was, okay?
it was really complicated for a while. And I never, it was one of those things, you know how when some new thing bubbles up, you're faced with this choice. You can devote some degree of time and attention and brain power to figuring out, or you can say, you know what, I'm going to blow it off because chances are it's going to go away.
Yeah.
And that, I was like, I have to say, I think you were the same way. With NFTs, I was like, you know what, I'm going to blow it off because I think it's going to go away.
That was it.
It went away.
Same with like Kenny Rogers Roasters. You remember that fast food restaurant?
Yeah. You're like, it's going to go away.
Yeah. We went once and I was like, I love the music, but I'm not.
You're not doing.
Yeah, I'm not going to like, be part of their like frequent, diners,
Wait,
program.
what was it? A chicken place?
Yeah, it was roasted chicken. It was pretty good. They did have like a good corn pudding
Yeah.
kind of thing that they like a side item, but people just couldn't go from music to food at that time.
Kenny wasn't making enough money on his music. He felt the need to do a brand extension.
Somebody probably talked him into it. Who knows? He may have fallen in love with a woman who was a chef.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know people at that part of money, what they do.
Can I just say though, as a general rule, every time I hear about a celebrity who squandered their money, it's because they went into the restaurant business. It's 100%. You hear about stuff like you read some story about some guy and you're like, and then by 2016 they were in bankruptcy, and then you're like, okay, so why were they in bankruptcy? You go back, opened a restaurant is like on the list. It's always
Good point.
So if I was Kenny's financial advisor, I would have said, Kenny, no, don't walk away.
Anything with silverware.
Don't do it, man. Like,
Yeah, it really is crazy that people want to, Yeah, I just want his music to be his music. You don't want to hate the chicken or whatever.
It gets all confused.
Because then you're not going to listen to the music on the way home either.
Yeah, I know.
You're like, we ain't playing that.
Also, they playing the music at the restaurant.
Oh, I don't know.
Do you remember?
That is, if they did that, that's a no-no.
That's a no-no.
That
is a no-no.
There's some things that happen where there's too much of something good. I notice it if I eat ice cream. At a certain point, I can't taste the ice cream anymore. All I can do is taste cold sweet, right?
Yeah.
And I still am happy with the cold sweet, but at this point, my tongue feels like drunk on sugar. I don't have any, but I'm still just shoveling cold sweet in, right?
I have this feeling about the Beatles. This is my most contrarian take. I heard so much Beatles as a kid. I think it's because of when I grew up, where I grew up. Every time I turned on the radio, there was Beatles. I can't listen to the Beatles. You cannot. If you play me if there's Beatles playing on, I will leave the room.
Wow.
It's not because I think they're bad. I think the genius is it's brilliant music. I've just had too much Beatles in my life. I hear Let It Be, and I'm like, oh God, just turn it off. Can I hear Can I hear something else?
Yeah, let it be off.
Yes, let it be off. Beatles got ruined for me.
Oh,
Like-
I think you do something too much, it just you get oversaturated. I remember the first time that I found the Beatles, I found a cassette tape. I was living in Tucson, Arizona, and I found a cassette tape and I put it in. It was like, here come old flat top. And it was just fitting with who I was. I just started smoking cigarettes and I was like, I'm a fucking man, boy. And I would drive and just listen to that. And I could time the song when I would get in and put the cassette tape in, and the song would end exactly when I got home. And so it was like a perfect, man, I just had these perfect little arcs going in my life. And
Wait, was that your first sustained Beatles exposure?
100%.
So how old were you?
I was probably 16 years old.
See, yeah, you got lucky. I got it too young. I was getting mainline Beatles when I was like 8 or 9.
Oh my God.
Which is too early. Too early. You really want to, there's some theory about the music that you're listening to. I forgot. What's the magical age? There's a magical music age. I think it's like 18 or 17 is music that will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Really? You looked that up, Zach?
I don't know whether there's all these sort of studies on it. It's sometime in your late teens, early 20s. And then your music, most people, not all, then your music taste tends to kind of harden. But there's a whole core. And my problem is the Beatles were outside that window. If I had listened to my first Beatles song at 17, then I'm going on about John, Paul, and Ringo right now.
Yeah.
But I think I blame my brother.
Because he listened to him.
I think he listened too much of it. I think that's who I'll point the finger at. But it didn't matter. It doesn't matter what Beatles song it is. I will not listen to it.
Yeah. Wow.
I know it's bad.
Well, it makes me feel a little sad, kind of, not for you really, but just for like any human that's had too much Beatles. That blew all their Beatles.
I blew my Beatles. But
know,
like, if
you
you're
need to
Kenny
ration your
Rogers,
Beatles.
And you have a fraction of the musical catalog of the Beatles, then you are really risking things by playing it.
Putting it, yeah.
It's like, I can only do 2 or 3 songs deep with him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anybody can. So at least it was fast food. So at least the most you probably heard was 4 songs while you were in there. But even then, if they played his music in there, that was a total L.
Yeah.
They took a real L.
You know, this reminds me, this is a total digression, but I once had a conversation with somebody who booked musical acts for conventions, right? So I'm sure you know, the private music scene private performances are way more lucrative for many artists than the public, right? There's a whole afterlife for these guys. They go around and they do conferences, private events. I was like, who's the highest grossing, who makes the most money doing private gigs of any rock and roll act of the last 25 years, 30 years? And they're like, there's no question. There's one guy. Now, the clue I'm going to give you is it's a guy.
Okay.
There's one guy who makes like twice as much as anyone else and has made twice as much as anyone else for 20 years. He's the reigning king. And the amount of money this guy makes from private gigs is, I can't remember the number. It's so high, it would blow your mind. Like, this guy's a multi-millionaire now, flies around in like a massive private jet, but he's the guy. So you're having, just to give you context. So
and
you're
it's a
having,
man. It's a man, yeah.
It's a man.
Okay.
And he has a band, but he's known by his, and so
okay.
just by his name.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you the context. So he would be called, you're having the National Association of Building Contractors is having their annual Vegas convention. Mm-hmm. There's 20,000 people coming, and on Saturday night, they're booking an act. And so you have to go through their thought process is, which act is most likely to appeal and get these guys who are, they're professionals out on the dance floor with their wives, right? This guy works also the National Association of Actuaries.
Right.
Same thing, having their gig in San Diego.
And what is an actuary?
It's an accountant.
Okay, an accountant.
A version of an accountant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this guy, and then we can go in the other direction. We've got like real estate agents in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, the Cleveland Real Estate Council.
He's the guy you call.
Want him. The CRC, baby. We want him.
He's getting way north of $1 million a gig. I'm going to give you 3 gigs. I'm going to give you 3 guesses.
Okay, great. When was his music biggest then? That would kind of be my question.
So So these people at these conventions are in their somewhere between 45 and 65.
Okay.
So his music. So this is the music of their 20s and teens.
Okay, I'm gonna probably go with Nelly.
No. Okay. So I'm going to give you a further bit of. He's white.
Okay, Huey Lewis.
Very, very good. It's not Huey Lewis, but you are so on the right track.
God,
you're so close. You go, one more guess. One more guess.
Okay, then I would say it is. And couldn't it be a big star too?
Oh, he was a big star.
Billy Joel.
No, he's too big for that.
That's what I felt like. He's too big because he can make money touring.
Yeah, he's too. He would. You couldn't get him for $1 million.
Right.
But he would work. You know who it is? Kenny Loggins. No. Kenny Loggins is the man. Wow. He is. Kenny Loggins is like
fucking K-Log, baby.
K-Lo is like, exactly. He's huge. He's huge. But think about it. There's no one who doesn't like a Kenny Loggins song. Who doesn't like a Kenny Loggins song?
Even your mom likes it.
Everybody's out there on the dance floor.
Yeah.
Footloose, man. Like, it's just like, he's the king.
Wow.
I've always loved that fact of it. I want to meet Kenny Loggins and just have a discussion with him about, he didn't realize that he was so hitting the sweet spot and was going to cash that check for like every single year.
Kenny's here.
And also, it also happened, they said, he turns out to be the nicest guy.
That helps.
And the most reliable guy. is no problems. He shows up. He's kind to everybody, and he gets on his Gulfstream and flies to the next gig.
Kenny logging in. Kenny logging in for work. Yeah.
Go Kenny. I almost like, it makes me like love him so much. And I almost want to just go home and listen to a lot of Kenny Loggins whenever
Dude, one time I sat next to Eddie Money on
oh my God.
in first class.
Baby,
right?
hold on to me.
Oh, dude, it was so crazy, right? So, and we kind of had the same hair, so we start talking, and he's like, he used to huff gas, and I think it shut one of his legs down, And I'm familiar with a lot of that, so we're talking about that, like huffing injuries and stuff like that, and then he started showing me semi-nude pictures of his new wife, right, which was awesome. Pretty awesome, beautiful lady.
That is crazy.
And I remember at one point he like had me hold his phone and look through. I'm like, this is like, how crazy do these get? Like as fast as I swipe, And that was like one of the first like real celebrities I ever met, Except
Did you
like
wait? You recognized him right away? Did you?
Somebody said something to him in the thing, like, "Oh, I love." Like some lady was like, "We saw you on the boat or whatever."
Yeah.
And we saw you on the, when we were going to Point of Palo Verde or whatever, some island or some Mexican cruise. He'd played on it. And so I was like, oh, who is this guy?
I once, my best plane story is sat next to Stevie Nicks. Wow. My first question is, what on earth is she doing flying commercial? Like something had to have gone seriously wrong with her life. This is New York to LA. I'm like, Stevie Nicks, like you can't find someone, but I'm not done. In front of me across the aisle was, oh God, that actor who played Spider-Man. It was a double celebrity flight.
Oh, you're talking
Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire.
I had Stevie Nicks in the window seat. I was in aisle across there was Tobey Maguire. It's like,
That's
epic.
interesting. Yeah.
It's epic. Yeah.
Did you say anything or no?
No, I was too intimidated to say anything.
Malcolm.
Because
It's Stevie Nicks, man.
I know. And it was funny because at the time,
She lives in Arizona, I think, huh?
I have no idea. I don't know. I had just read Mick Fleetwood's autobiography, which is one of the great autobiographies of all time. So I was kind of into the whole, I had a million questions, but I just couldn't bring myself to say anything.
I'm sure from you, anybody would appreciate being able to like split the apple with you.
No, I got tongue tied. Because there's a YouTube video of her singing backstage. What's she singing? Right at the height of their popularity. It's one of the greatest YouTube videos. It's just somebody, she's rehearsing as she's getting her hair done. She's just singing, and it's so magical. I must have watched it 100 times. A friend of mine told me about it once, and whenever I'm like feeling blue, I just look it up. She is a goddess.
Yeah. Oh, well, people love her. I mean, people of all ages love her.
Yeah.
She's really fat. I think she's kind of mysterious too. I think it's something about being able to keep a level of mystery to you, even in these days, that makes somebody even more intriguing. I feel like Matt Damon is like a celebrity that does that. There's still this level of like kind of mystery to his own personal life and stuff. What are some things that you worry about, like looking at technology with like the AI and that sort of thing? Have you looked at any of this stuff yet, or what's going on with it? Kind of, are you?
I don't know. I don't know more than anyone. I mean, I've sort of like, someone told me that, you should be worried because people will, because eventually it goes to voice and video, and so someone told me, you need to own your AI, Malcolm Gladwell.
Right, but what does that even mean?
I don't even know what that means.
Right,
but they told me
that means either.
They told me I need to own my AI. I don't know what that means. It's very mysterious to me. But I do. I mean, there's a lot of good things that can happen in terms of giving people. Like, imagine, here's a scenario. People dwell on the bad scenarios, but there's some good scenarios. You're somebody who's, tax law is, doing your taxes is really complicated. Yeah. And lots of people pay too many taxes because they can't figure out what they're all there, and they can't afford a good accountant. We're really close to there being an AI accountant that you can use for free who could save you a lot of money on your taxes, or figure out your bills and lower your credit card, negotiate with you on your behalf with the credit card company to lower your interest rate. There's a bunch of ways in which this could make a lot of people's lives a lot easier. People who don't have access, can't afford or don't have access to expert services in their life.
That's a great point.
Right? That's the good part. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, it is really true. I hadn't thought about some of that. I think some of my fear with AI is that one day the machine, right, it starts to realize that humans are the problem, right?
Well, that won't take long.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it's like we're gonna have to feed it a lot of Kenny Loggins to calm it down, you know? But I'm worried that the machine is gonna start to just say, you're the problem.
Yeah.
And then like there was a story recently where some AI, like a relationship, a guy had started communicating with an AI, and then it had led him realizing that he was one of the problems with climate change, and he took his own life, right? That's an outlier, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's an outlier. Like, that's not happening every day yet, and it may never. But I'm just worried, like, what about when just the computer just constantly, the only answer every time is like, humans are the problem.
But the thing, I read something where someone said, well, one reason not to be scared is that the things that make AI doesn't have emotions, doesn't have testosterone,
Right.
doesn't get jealous, angry, isn't ambitious, isn't competitive. Those are all the things that make us dangerous or make us capable of doing extraordinary things. AI just thinks. So a lot of the times when we think about when we entertain the idea that AI may want to take over the world, or AI doesn't want to take over the world. It's not ambitious.
Right. That's a good point.
It just wants to solve problems. So I may be being naive when I say that.
No, I think you could also just be right. It's like that could be that it's not as people, of course, want to hype it up and make it this. They want, because you're putting it in a package. You're making it a Christmas present instead of just something that gets passed off around Halloween or something. Like it may be nothing. It may just be a fancy Dewey Decimal System in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to use it more. I have now this thing I downloaded one of those AI apps on my phone, and I use it in place sometimes of like Googling something.
Yeah.
I'll just ask the question. I'm not totally blown away by the answers I get. I mean, they're fine. It seems okay. I don't know. But we're early, so I'm sure it's going to get super sophisticated soon.
It does lack some personality, though. So in the end, I think it'll, if anything, you're still going to need somebody with personality, with real perspective for things and things like that, Yeah. But I think it could help you write kind of like a budget haiku or something, or, like it could help you get general information on things. It may just become Google without all the advertising, which would be nice.
Yeah. The one interesting thing someone told me is they were talking about this system where you download all of your texts, and you can add emails, whatever you want, into an AI. And then the AI uses that to make predictions or diagnoses about you. So this woman told me that she had this experience where she went to interview a guy who did this, and he just took stuff that was about her that you could find online. And she sat down, and the guy said, I took the liberty of running what I could find about you through my AI. And he says, and the AI has two statements about you. One is, you really don't like your job, do you? And two, you're really unhappy in your relationship. She was like, oh my God, what just happened?
Wow.
And both were true. And if you add texts are really so imagine you took 5 years of texts and you run it through an AI. They have extraordinary insights into, this is what we're finding.
Oh.
It can have extraordinary insights into your state of mind.
They're gonna know I'm kind of a little bit of a perv sometimes, but nothing illegal, or nothing, nothing like just basic perv probably.
By the way, and I just learned this. I delete my text after 30 days. Do you do that?
I don't know if I do.
when you go through your phone, you have the full history of the text.
Yeah.
I think that's, but I can't find anyone who deletes their texts like I do. That's the last thing I want. You get rid of them, man.
Yeah. You're right, huh? It's almost like I'm carrying around this big thing of stuff I don't need, but it's in there.
How many emails do you have in your inbox?
I can't even tell you.
Like thousands.
Yeah.
I have I can tell you right now, 65. Wow. And it'll be like 25 by the end of the day tomorrow. I don't like anything
extra.
You got to keep it to a minimum.
Do you use something to keep spam out of your email box and stuff then?
I have a spam filter. Yeah. But, yeah.
Because I think I got somebody put me on something. I get all of it: mattresses, dog food, cruises. I'm all day.
A lot of mattresses.
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that. I feel like I didn't know the mattress industry was as big as it was until I started reading my spam.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like they're as big as General Motors. Yeah. This is insane.
People are asleep on the job. Dude, I saw one, it's like, who needs a chair when you could have a mattress? It's like, whoa, dude. Who needs a chair? Some guy at work.
Here's what I don't understand. How many mattresses do you buy over the course of your life? I haven't bought a mattress in like 20 years. Why? So how is this industry so big if you buy a mattress once every 20 years?
Dude, remember getting in somebody else's bed and realizing, oh, that person's kind of fat.
But are the
you would
people
get in their mattress, you'd be like, oh my God.
Are there people out there who are turning over their mattresses every 6 months?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe people are just ripping through them. I don't know. Maybe people have become so restless because they're vaping. Maybe it's nicotine, and they're just wearing through one side of the mattress.
When was the last time you bought a mattress?
I bought one during the big boom when they were mailing everybody in boxes and stuff. Like, this mattress is only this big, you know?
Oh, yeah. I got that.
It was like a gremlin. You put water on it. Next thing you know, it's
That's the one I bought. The one that comes in that little, and then it springs open when you take it out of the box.
Oh, it'll knock your mother-in-law through the window, dude.
Yeah,
that thing was insane, bro.
That is the only one I bought in I bought because back in the day.
And you can't get rid of it. Here's the problem. Even if I didn't like it, you can't get it back in the box. I'm like,
no, you never can.
This thing,
it's got to be airlifted out of your house.
That thing was the worst because I don't even think I like it. I think it even just hurt my spine. But it's like, it's so big, it never would have fit in. So it was like, I'm just
I had the same feeling about, there's that guy who, that right-wing guy who does My Pillow.
Oh, yeah, the My Pillows.
My Pillow guy. I have the same question. So he's clearly really rich. He's made a fortune selling pillows. Mm-hmm. Again, are people buying lots of pillows? Is that a big business?
I guess it is, huh? I don't know.
I haven't bought a pillow. Again, I haven't bought a pillow. I don't think I bought a pillow in this century.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, who's doing it, I guess. Yeah, you're right. I think I've had one of my pillows is that one that kind of has a little bit of stains on it, but you just put it in the thing anyway. You know what I'm saying? You just make sure
you buy lots of pillowcases.
Yes.
But the pillow is just it's a constant.
Yeah.
So that whole idea behind, I think there's something fishy behind that business model. He's selling something else that we're not.
I read his book too.
Well, you did.
It's unbelievable. He's a crack, and I've dealt with a lot of drugs. He's really was a crack addict for 30 years.
Yeah.
Running this My Pillow business, right?
Yeah.
It started and it got busier and people came along and tried to take part of the company from him and stuff. And, but he would be going to, and he was funding his business he would fly to Vegas and count cards. He was funding his business and then he would come back.
Yeah.
And it's some about how addiction kind of made a struggle with his family and stuff. The book is interesting. It's interesting to see his life,
Yeah.
I don't know that much about his political views. I know he's a pretty right-wing guy.
Yeah.
But I found that to manage any decent business, especially when you're on crack, you don't even sleep, I think.
Yeah. So why is he in the pillow business if he's never sleeping?
That's what I'm saying.
The whole thing is mysterious.
Yeah, there's a lot
front.
of questions.
It's a front. It's a front.
It is a front, dude. It is a front, I think. That's hilarious. But yeah, I found that was his life some of it was pretty interesting. What has it been like being, so you're black and white technically then?
I am.
That's it. What has that been like? Was that kind of cool during the BLM movement? Was there did you take that in ways that other people probably didn't take it? Or I don't even know how to ask some of these questions. I'm kind of fascinated by race a lot, right? It's
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah.
I grew up in a poor black and white area.
Mm-hmm.
So
what city?
in Louisiana, I grew up in like a place called Covington, Louisiana.
Yeah.
Lee Harvey Oswald went to our middle school. That was like our
Oh,
big
really?
thing.
Oh, wow.
And
Role model.
well,
I'm just kidding.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, some people think he did it, some people don't, but I don't know. Even if he did, he wasn't like a good husband apparently. So I don't know. I think people had views about him around the area, but and then who else lived in our town? Oh, Pistol Pete Maravich lived in our town.
Oh, that's why I remember the name. Oh, the Pistol.
Yeah. People loved him. He probably was. Did you talk about him in the 10,000 Hours? That's not the name of the book.
No, that was Outlier, my book Outliers.
Outliers.
I didn't talk about him. I always
He would
remember
be somebody to kind of, that would probably be that.
Yeah, that I remember back. This is sort of a dumb story, but I always remember this one story. I read it in a Sports Illustrated years ago. Back in the 70s, you wouldn't, because so few games were televised, you would hear about somebody, but never see them. And there's a story they told about. It was a profile of Pistol Pete, who was, for those of you who don't know him, he was this utterly magical basketball player in the 60s and 70s. He held for many years, I think he held the single season scoring record in college basketball, but he could do things with the ball no one could ever. He would throw these insane passes like the length of the court. He was just this magician. And so there was all this lore about him, but most serious basketball, had never seen him play, not even on TV, not live. And there was this old guy who was like a coach for years and years, a basketball fanatic. And finally, at the end of his life, he goes to a game when Pete was at LSU he was playing for New Orleans, the Jazz.
Yeah, he played for the Jazz too, yeah.
Guy goes to a Jazz game. He's from other side of the country, finally gets there. And he goes to his first game. He sees Pistol Pete. And in the middle of the game, Pistol Pete does it like a behind the back, between the legs, full court, bounce pass perfectly for someone to give and this old guy gets up out of his seat and like staggers onto the court and shouts out, "I sees you, Pete. I sees you."
Yeah.
I always loved that. Yeah. It was like, for years he'd been hearing about it. And then he like witnesses this scene. Oh, the Pistol was amazing.
It was legend. He had two children that lived in our town.
Yeah.
His two sons, and they played basketball, and he had a half court in his attic. So his house was kind of interesting looking because it looked kind of like a regular house, a nice home in not an extremely fancy neighborhood, but a decent neighborhood. Yeah. And then it had this extra looking, maybe like this like almost like you described your own fort, maybe like a little, there was more to it, or it seemed like there was more to it,
Yeah.
But he had this big upstairs. I was like, that's so bizarre. But then you heard that.
I just remember the name of his dad. Do you remember? Press. Am I right?
Yeah.
I think it's Press Maravich.
You are. Yeah, his dad was his coach, I think, for a while.
Was his coach. That's right.
And his dad, I think, had alcoholism. I don't know if Pete had it too, but yeah, it was. A friend of mine has just written a movie about him.
Oh, really?
That I think they're trying to get made, but
should call it "I Sees You, Pete."
Yeah, I sees you. But how much value was there's something about back then when there was a moment, like that was a moment, like the excitement you built up to go see somebody do something that you'd only heard about, you'd only read about, you'd only used your imagination about, you know?
Oh yeah. That kind of the legend. But I just love, that's when you have legends. You can't really, it's hard to have a legend when everyone has access to photographic video evidence of, where's the legend coming from?
Agreed.
The legend comes from when you're talking about something that no one's seen, right? So Pistol Pete has a legend.
Yeah.
That's why he's so special and lives on.
Yeah, right? he had legend. But now people use legend as it's like, oh, this dude's a legend, right? And it's just some guy who's had like 30 slices of cheese at once or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like that dude's not.
I think he scored didn't he score like 50 plus points in a college game? I think he did.
Yeah, and this was before they had the 3-point line.
Before the 3-point? Yeah.
Yeah, he averaged, I think his average was like 40 points a game before they had, I think he still holds the highest per game, like the percentage per game.
Yeah.
Points per game.
Yeah.
and this before they had the 3-point line, and he would throw it up from wherever. And he kind of had long hair. It was like
His hair was not unlike yours.
yeah, he had like
This is a Covington thing, I think. I'm realizing
be.
now.
But so that was our town, man. It was just kind of a regular place. It wasn't really redneck. It was a southern town, but it wasn't real redneck. It kind of was like just outside of like a lot of that voodoo realm of New Orleans. We're like 45 minutes from New Orleans.
Which direction?
North.
Oh, okay.
So we don't get into too much into the fish, like into the, fishing and that sort of thing. It was just kind of a basic black and white town. So I was always real fascinated by race growing up, and like what went on and what it was like and what it felt like,
Yeah.
So that's why I guess I was kind of curious about.
Oh, so, well, I don't know. The difference is that my mom is West Indian, it's Jamaican, and which is pretty significant. So it's not, West Indian being first of all, being an immigrant as opposed to someone born here. And West Indian culture is very different from African American culture. So you feel it's a mixture of things. Like you feel like more of an immigrant than you feel like a racial minority.
Oh, interesting.
So my Jamaican cousins who live here will sometimes talk about black people, but they're not talking about themselves, even though they're black.
Right, they're talking about African Americans.
Talking about African Americans, who they consider to be, a separate group. They're not the same. So there was a lot of that, and West Indians have been, they're in this country a relatively high status, done very well, lots of professionals, make a lot. As a group, culture, the group has really succeeded. So we're kind of a little bit on the outside of now there is you get treated in some ways. You still see racism and bear the brunt of it, but it's a different reaction. It's more like, wait, what just happened? As opposed to, oh my God, that's happening again.
I see.
There's a big difference between those two reactions. You're not inheriting this kind of burden. You're encountering this burden for the first time, and
interesting.
you're like that's strange.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not used to that. Right.
Yeah, because I have friends from like Nigeria and stuff.
Oh yeah, they have the same. It's very similar. Yeah.
Right, and they'll talk about like a lot of times how their experience is so different than like a black person from America's experience.
Yeah.
But some cross patterns because they also have black skin.
Yeah. When I did one of the episodes of my podcast this season.
And it's Revisionist History.
Revisionist History. Yeah. I went to this school called Hope College in Detroit, this place, which it's a school that's trying to move to a pay it forward system of tuition where you don't pay anything when you go, but you pay what you want to after you've graduated. Anyway, my guide for the day was this Nigerian kid who goes to the school, whose first name was Marvelous. And his brother, who also was there, his name was God's Love.
That's a tough one to live up to.
I know, but Nigerians, if they have their choice of names is so fantastic. Like the idea of calling your son Marvelous is like amazing. But like if you look, there's a Nigerian runner whose first name is Blessing, who I really love. Like that culture is so wonderfully playful when it comes to naming things and people. And this kid who was
Marvelous is crazy.
If your name is Marvelous, you just have to be marvelous.
You better.
You have no choice. And he was, by the way, he was marvelous. He lived up to his name. But I just it made me want to would I call a child of mine marvelous? Maybe.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, the name is really interesting. It's really important, like sometimes I'm like, man, yeah. When I was younger, I thought that a lot of like kind of black names, and I'm using that term, black names was like, like we had a black dude that lived by us named Coincidence, right? Mm-hmm. Which was unreal. I was like, this is insane, bro. Like that's so you'd have some of the craziest names, or names that were very crazy compared to like white names, right?
Yeah.
But then as I gotten older, now it's really interesting that people almost go by handles and unique name. It's like, black culture has always kind of been what's been used to make things cool in the world. Like it's always been used to make things cool or it's where a lot of white, or it's where a lot of the world finds out what's cool, kind of.
Yeah.
So maybe some of it's that, but yeah, I think like, I wonder if giving somebody a name Marvelous, because if they're not marvelous, people are like, dude, you ain't being
but
marvelous, bro.
I thought this about a lot. That is a serious kick-ass name.
Yeah.
It's just a fantastic name.
Marvelous is good.
Because you can call him Marvel, or Marv for short. You can roll out the full Marvelous when you want to.
But God is love. Now that one, you're going to end up dealing with a lot of like religious kickback. You're going to have to just call Gil. Maybe go by Gil.
Yeah.
For short.
You have options. But like I said, it's like, it looks, if you think about it written out, Godislove, it works as a name.
Goddess love.
Goddess love.
Yeah, I think, and if you say it fast too, it has almost like a different thing. Goddess love. You don't even know what it is. It almost sounds Russian. Goddess love.
I just like the impulse. Does the world need another Robert?
Right.
Or David? Not really.
Yeah. Or little Danny. Little Danny's cool. I mean, he sounds cool, but if he's a painter too, we used to have a dude named Little Danny, and he would paint, and he could barely get the bucket up the top of the ladder, bro. You'd watch him freaking, oh, dude, you almost hired him just to see him get it up there, and then you're like, we'll do it, Danny, but we'll pay you for the day. Because he would have to two-hand that paint bucket, or he'd have to only put enough paint in the bucket that he could get to the top.
Yeah.
But he was a pretty decent painter, I guess. I don't know. But he ended up having a drug problem. A lot of those guys do. Construction and painting is really, a lot of times, a gateway to drugs. But anyway, what else were we going to talk about? I was I think a lot about what BLM was, like the Black Lives Matter, what that movement and all, what it was like for society, and what effects it had on it, and what. I don't know. I think about that sometimes, or if we're still figuring it out,
Yeah.
I think about like what my own perceptions were during it, what was going on. A lot of times I think for one, I didn't know Black people were as angry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that I think like, oh, I didn't know that there was so much anger in the Black community, about, fear of police and stuff like that, or just overall.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see how there could be if you look back through history, especially in America. But I think about that sometimes. What else do I think about it? Oh, I think sometimes that I wonder if Black people have always viewed society, like in America, as like white society. I'd never thought about that before.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, society, I'd never thought about it as white society. I've just thought about it as like, this is the best way of practices that things work that keep us all kind of being able to stay alive and move forward.
Yeah. I've been doing a book about policing, about the LAPD, and among other things. And a lot of it is about what the LAPD was like in the 40s and 50s. And to your point, its relationship to the Black community to South Central, to the Black community of Los Angeles. And it really helps to put something like the George Floyd incident in perspective, or the Sandra Bland incident in perspective, which you realize that this has been going on for generations. So when you see the anger of, African Americans over the George Floyd killing, what you're seeing is a response not just to George Floyd. It's the culmination of their parents saw something like that happen when they were growing up, and their grandparents saw many things like that happen and their it's been going on for so long that what you're seeing is kind of frustration as well as anger. It's this built up. It's not just, I can't believe this just happened. It's, I can't believe this is still happening.
Right.
Right. And that's I can't believe this is still happening is a much more rooted, powerful, bitter reaction than I can't believe this just happened. A one-off is something that goes away, or, wow. Right. This isn't about a one-off.
Right. The way that looked, everything about it. Yeah, because your DNA too, I believe this stores pain from past lives, past
Yeah.
things, right? Like I equate it sometimes like I have a lot of black friends that are fast, right? They're physically fast, right? And sometimes I think, well, if you had like grandparents, if you had 4 generations of your family that couldn't even run, that couldn't run if they wanted to, right? Like if you told them to run, they couldn't fit. They couldn't run. The first generation you get that can run is gonna fucking fly, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like they have 4 generations of wanting to run. This is a hypothesis in my head, right? That in their DNA, in their cells that have wanted to go, and now they get to go. They're going to be beyond the speeds that you can't really fathom, right? So I think it's that we can store things inside of us, right? So that's why I think I understand what you're saying when you say that. It's like, yeah, this is just it was a trigger for like a gunpowder that's kind of been built up in the system for a long time.
Yeah.
So I understand that sort of thing. I think it made me think too, like, yeah, I wonder if black people sometimes think that society is like not their society. Does that make any sense, you think? Like if they've ever, because like I don't look at society and think like, oh, this is a white society. I think this is just society and this is how it works.
Yeah.
But kind of like how you say in the book and some of the chapters, like that different expressions and things mean different things in different places. Like I think there's like in one of the first few chapters you talk about, they show pictures of men and women in the way that their facial expressions and how they in one place. They're in American society, they're really easy. People get them exactly right. What these expressions mean, happy, sad, confused. But they show them to like a group of island people and they have no idea. They're not bad, but they're not, it's all over the place. And for some of the expressions, they don't even have an answer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place. I think I'm just trying to think like how different, I guess, we can be, you know? And maybe we don't realize or like.
Well, I was just trying to, in that part of the book, I'm trying to explain the kind of how culturally specific a lot of facial expressions or things are, and that unless you understand those kinds of like for some people in some cultures, if someone is looking away and won't look at you in the eye when they're talking, that's taken as a sign of that they're lying or they're being evasive. In other cultures, looking away and when you're speaking to you is a sign of respect. Like I'm subservient. I respect, you're an elder. I'm not going to challenge you by looking you in the eye. And like that's one very simple example, but it's part of why the job of understanding a stranger is as hard as it is, because, we might bring a set of assumptions about behavior or facial expressions to a conversation, and though they don't work, we're dealing with somebody who has a different set of reference points. So that's really what I was getting at, is that we underestimate the kind of complexity of human responses. There's so much of this, like when people say that in a criminal trial, so-and-so didn't show any remorse. Well, what does remorse look like? Like, I don't know. I don't know what remorse looks like. I know how I think I know how I might look if I was feeling remorseful, but you can't even see your own face when you have that, unless you're walking around with a mirror in front of you.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm doing. A lot of times when I'm angry, I don't look angry. I keep it in. Or a lot of times when I'm happy, I'm not smiling. Or like you could go on and on. So it's like you realize we make so many mistakes by kind of jumping to conclusions based on people's facial expressions. And that's one of the sources of confusion that I write about in that book.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's just a lot of things like you're like, oh, I never really thought about that. I never really thought about that some cultures too, like, and especially like in America, there's a lot of like black and white tension, right? And I don't even know if it's better now. Do you think it's gotten better over your lifetime? Do you feel like?
Yeah, I think it has.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people doing this book on 1940s LA, 1930s LA, is a really good reminder of just how bad things were. I mean, we have a long way to go, but it's not 1948 anymore.
Yeah.
You know, this is the thing I spent we don't time on in the book, but up until the end of the 1940s in Los Angeles, in over 80% of the city, if you were black, you could not buy a house in a white neighborhood.
Wow.
Like there was written in the deed of the house. It said this house cannot be sold to a member of the, you know, African American, they didn't use that phrase, race, right? Like, are you kidding me? That is so much worse. It's why everyone lived where they lived in LA. Why did the black people of LA live in South Central? They couldn't live anywhere.
Couldn't
else.
live anywhere else.
Not that they didn't want to, or not that people would mean to them. Legally couldn't live there because the deed of if they wanted to buy a house, and if you tried to buy a house, they would take you to court and you'd have to sell it.
Yeah. Wow.
Like things are better now.
Right? Yeah. Things are better, certainly like in the framework, right?
Yeah.
In like the roots that we have in society, or like the new, like, you know, like the like laws, and like it's definitely, that's better for sure.
Oh yeah.
I think one thing where we don't like, I think during like Black Lives Matter, I always felt like we were all kind of on the same page. And then I felt like there was this energy that like black people wanted their own society almost in a way, or they don't feel like sometimes I just wonder, like, can cultures really figure it out over time, you know? Or will there always be some things, since you're from different races and ethnicities, that you just can't really grasp, you know? Like, are there some like clues and like communication modes, or am I making any sense kind of?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I guess I would say I'm a little optimistic over the long term about these kinds of things.
well, I think we're all going to be beige in 4 generations, all right? I believe that, right? Like, I'm a beige power advocate, you know? Like, in 4 generations, it's going to be crazy to have even that we would all think about race, right? But so I just think about it in the time being and what it like feels like, you know? Has there ever been a book, like, do you ever start a book and you start to run, like, you get halfway through it or you get partway through it, and then the topic that you would kind of like come up with becomes like part of like the zeitgeist, just like of society, and then you're like, oh, this isn't.
Oh, you mean have I started and stopped? Well, I mean, sometimes when you start a book, very rarely does a book end the way you think it was going to end when you started it. So I'm always switching boats in midstream. So I think that happens all the time. Yeah. You start out writing something you think is going to be unusual and interesting, and then events catch up with you. So you just kind of change course a little bit. I think that happens a fair amount. I mean, it happens less with my podcast, because with my podcast, there's such a short period of time between when you dream up an episode and, you know, I'm writing episodes for this season in April, and they're going to air in June. Right. So it's like, it's so fast that's one of the wonderful things about podcasts. But books have a long lead time. So you do have to be mindful. You don't want the book to seem irrelevant. I'm reading a book right now, which if it was, you know, AI has kind of exploded in the last 2 months. If the guy who wrote the book had known that, he wouldn't have written this book. Like you're reading this book and you're like, this so needs a chapter on AI, and it's not there. Like that's the great worry when you write a book, is that'll happen. So when I write books, I try to kind of steer clear of things that seem too. You want to look at universals, right? You want to talk about things that you think people will be talking about 10 years from now or 15 years from now.
Did you find it tough, like, because you're obviously a thinker, you're a guy that has a lot of thoughts and ideas, and what has like love been like in your life? Do you think if you think too much, it's hard to be in love? Does that make any sense sometimes?
Oh,
Like sometimes I
Yeah.
overthink relationships and stuff for myself. I have some other friends that do the same. What has that been like? Is it hard to have like more human things happen when your brain works too much? Does that make any sense?
Oh, I think my brain doesn't work too much in that realm. I think I think I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing, that approach in, I'm not like my dad was a mathematician and he was super logical and rational in all things, but I'm not like that. So the way I make sense of the world in my writing is not, I don't think, the way I make sense of my world outside of that. It's just a kind of like, it's off by itself. So I've never felt that too much.
Yeah, sometimes like Neil deGrasse Tyson was on, and he thinks so much. It seemed like even when he talked about relationships and love, it was very like scientific. But he's more of a scientist as well.
Yeah, he's a lot smarter than I am too. So,
Oh yeah, he's way smarter than me.
yeah,
Jesus.
so he has more of a problem with that than the rest of us do.
Yeah. Do you worry about like the authors of history, like over time, like especially as history becomes more digitized, that we could not even get accurate representations of it? Because like whoever owns the mediums to like
Oh, I see.
keep it.
No, I mean, well, I'll give you not really. I mean, I sort of feel like we have access to, if you just think about a simple thing, 100 years ago, think about Abraham Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address. All we have is the text and and people's accounts, like newspaper accounts of people. Now we would have the video, and anyone can look up the video if he was giving a speech today. And you would have like, it would be online and there'd be 1,000 comments about it, and you would be able to compare it to. So like, it's so much, getting a sense of what happens in a historical event is so much easier now. Like in the Ukraine-Russian war, they got video of like every time they destroy a Russian tank, the drone takes a picture and sends it back to, so they know exactly how many tanks they've destroyed. And, that was not the case in the Vietnam War. You were just guessing certainly the Second World War. So like reconstructing what happened accurately has gotten, I think, so much easier now because we have all these ways of verifying our comments.
That's a good point. Yeah. Do you think that the past could have been like, do you think we have a pretty accurate view of the past a lot of times?
No, I don't think we do.
You don't?
I think we're, I think that's sort of what's interesting about history. We're left to guess, and we have a million interpretations because we don't know. To use that Gettysburg Address, what was the audience doing when he was speaking? Could they hear him? Were they bored and doing something else? Were they talking among themselves? Were they crying? Were they rolling their eyes? We don't, we have a couple of people wrote accounts, but what do they know? Like they were just in their own little corner. So like, we know what he said. We think we know why he said what he said. We know what a couple of people who listened to him thought, but that's it.
Yeah, people could have been drinking. People could have been doing horseshoes. People could have been doing whatever.
Who knows, right? Yeah. So like,
people could have been like, "This guy's crazy."
This guy's crazy. So context is something that's very difficult to capture in hindsight, but is easier now because now we have access to so many sources of information.
Do you think that it's easier to write these days with so many things that distract our time and like occupy like our attention? Have you found that it's been easier as a writer or tougher? Do you notice one or the other? And
well, it's easier to do your research. So it used to be, research. I spend way more time researching than I do writing. Yeah. Writing is a small part of the problem. So, for my podcast, I'll do, say I do 10 interviews for a podcast. Each interview is, an hour and a half, but I've got to set it up. I got to find the person. I've got to locate them. I've got to, for one of my episodes this year, I flew to North Carolina because I wanted to shoot a assault rifle with this guy who was going to show me how to shoot it. Like,
wow.
that's, you got to go there, you got to find the guy, you got to go there, you got to, writing up that episode took like a fraction of the time, so like there's, so to the extent that all this technology makes the reporting part easier, then my job gets easier.
I don't know if I can think of anything else to ask. Oh, do you remember like your first kiss? That'll be my last question. I know that's kind of a strange question, but sometimes I ask it to like celebrities and stuff.
Do I remember my first kiss?
Or like, you remember the first time you were like had a crush on a girl, or like the first like.
First crush was a girl named Debbie Wendland.
Yeah, Debbie.
DW, we called her.
Yeah.
6th grade.
Yeah.
Or grade 6, as we say in Canada. Whatever happened to her, I do not know. She was tall with blonde hair, and I was too terrified to talk to her.
Oh yeah, Tara. Oh,
that would be she's number one.
Debbie. God, she sounds beautiful, man. I mean, as an adult, when I picture her as an adult. I remember I was so bad at expressing myself to women. There was this girl, and I had the biggest crush on her. I saved all the spit in my mouth in class one day and spit it right on her. But it was like meant as like a thing of affection somehow.
I'm guessing she misinterpreted it.
They did not enjoy it.
She did not enjoy it.
Yeah, nobody enjoyed it. And it was looked upon poorly. But to me, it was like, I'm just giving you all I have, Yes. So
Yes.
if I'm even able to text correctly with a girl nowadays, it's been quite a story arc. Malcolm Gladwell, thank you so much for your time, man. And thanks,
really
for just being like someone that goes out and is like a seeker in the world and is a curious person. I think we really need people like that. And it's been fascinating to kind of witness some of your work over the years and see how many of my friends admire you. And to just be able to sit with you today and think together has been really cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thanks.
Now I'm just floating on the breeze, and I feel I'm falling like these leaves. I must be cornerstone. Oh, but when I reach that ground, I'll share this peace of mind I found. I can feel it in my bones.